Hello, Tech Pros, episode 194.
Whatever product you're working on, whether it's technological or not, think about the behavior of how your users engage with your product and what your critical behaviors are and what you can do to help your user do that more or do it in a way that's more helpful to them and build that long-term habit.
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Dalton Combs. Happy Friday, Dalton.
Happy Friday, Chad.
Are you ready for the weekends?
Yeah, I got a nice weekend planned. Going out to Joshua Tree, gonna do some camping.
Wow, cool. Man, I haven't been camping in a long time. I used to do it a ton when I was a kid and when I was a young adult. And then, I don't know, I got married and life happened and and now we're big city slickers and I hardly ever get out in the woods and in the outdoors that much, especially to go camping anymore. But man, it brings back a lot of great memories and it sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, nice to go spend a little bit of time in a cell phone dead zone.
Yes, that I need to do. I was about to, hang on. Let me check myself. I was about to say I need to go out in the woods somewhere, out in a cell phone dead zone and do an episode on being unplugged. But then I wouldn't be unplugged if I was working and recording an episode about being unplugged. So maybe I'll go out into a cell phone dead zone and think about how awesome it is to be unplugged, and then I'll come back later during the work week and do an episode about how that felt. How's that
sounds like the way to do it.
Cool. Well, while working on his PhD in NeuroEconomics, Dalton Combs learned a lot about motivation and why people do what they do. Now he's the founder CEO of Dopamine Labs. They've designed a product that makes it easy for any developer to increase the retention and engagement by turning their app into a habit. Dalton, this sounds, it's like mind-blowing. It's boggling me about how you can do it. There's science around how you can turn an app into a habit and make the engagement levels go up based off of, I don't know, the things that you're gonna do with your API and your plugins and your app stuff. So yeah, absolutely. I want to dive into that. But first, what is NeuroEconomics? What is that all about? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so NeuroEconomics is so economists have some really great models for thinking about how people interact with each other. Mm-hmm. And then what neuroeconomists do is they take those models of interaction and they put people in MRIs or attach EEGs to their head and try and read the brain and see if the models that economists have come up with can tell us something important about the way brains actually work, or vice versa, whether looking at the way brains actually work can help us better figure out why people do what they do in economic situations.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out a practical example. Maybe you can help me. So let me throw out a guess, and you can tell me how far off or on I am. Right. So okay. You're gonna stick Chad into this machine, into this MRI. You're gonna scan my right. Okay, you're gonna scan my brain and make sure that I have one first of all, and that there's like synapses is firing, and I'm not a robot. Okay, cool. So that's going on, and now maybe you're gonna flash pictures of products at Walmart, and they're gonna be priced with like $19.99. Oh, how's that feel? Or at $19.97. Ooh, what happened to your brain there? And let's see if I respond better to a $19.99 product versus a $19.99. Does that make sense? Am I anywhere
totally.
close?
That is not far off from what my thesis work looked like.
Oh, so, sweet.
Yeah, so my PhD thesis was on something similar. I put people in MRIs and I looked at their brain and I was trying to figure out when they looked at an option on the screen, how did they encode how valuable it was to them? So not its color, not its shape, not what kind of object it was, but how did they encode how much they wanted that thing? Mm-hmm. And so we were looking for that signature in the brain, and we were taking a bunch of economic models about how people might do that and seeing which ones match up best to the data.
Okay, so was it stuff that you know that that individual would absolutely want based off of what they've told you, or was it just like generic stuff like, hey, here's a big mansion on the beach, you want that? Oh yeah, I want that.
Right. So it was stuff that it was all food, and it was food that we had a task they did before they went in the scanner that where they didn't tell us, but they showed us how much they liked each of the things, and then we used that and we looked for a signature in the brain that matched what they said before they went in the scanner, what they showed us before they went in the scanner.
Interesting. So they're pointing at plates of lasagna and tacos and hamburgers and broccoli, and they're like, yes, 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 no. And then you're mapping them and seeing if their brains are going green, 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 red, or if it's actually doing something else.
You got it. That's
Perfect.
what I did.
Dude, I could be a neuro. No, I can't. I'm just kidding. I'm just making this stuff up as I'm going. Well, it's very interesting, right? Because on today on People Friday on Hello Tech Pros, the reason I started this episode, this segment in the podcast, is because I'm fascinated with how people work and creating connections with people, creating relationships with people, and understanding how to communicate with them. So if you, Dalton, or our audience has not heard episode 141, that's where I explained about my history and struggles with social anxiety disorder, and how as a young adult and as a kid, like I was just petrified by being around people and petrified about having just the thought of trying to have a conversation with somebody that I wasn't intimately familiar with or spent years around just made me, I could lock up, right? I would just absolutely lock up and could not even process like how to get an actual word out of my mouth. And so that's been a slow recovery period, or a recovery process, or a growth process to learn how to adapt to society and adapt to my career. And so there's been a lot of stepping stones. It's still a struggle in some areas. But on this podcast, I said, okay, I want to do an episode every week on people and why relationships and why people and why understanding like the ins and outs of people is so important, because so many times in my tech career, I leaned on the tech, right? I leaned on the technology as my crutch. And I said, okay, if I can master this new software development programming language, then I'll be good. Or if I can learn the next critical algorithm or whatever and apply that in my job, then I'll get a promotion. And sometimes that worked, but most of the times it didn't. And what really helped me excel my career was when I started relating to people and talking to people and building relationships with them, and then working together in teams, like as an integral part of the team and as a leader of the team, rather than just like a bystander doing some tasks. And so for me, this whole topic is extremely valuable, extremely important. And if you stuck me in the MRI and asked me about it, I'm sure it would go off like fireworks, because it's just super passionate about it. But what you're talking about here is really, really different and interesting in a new way that we haven't talked about on the show, which is like literally what's firing off on people's brains. What are the cells doing? What are the neurons doing? And then how can we map that and then create apps or create user interfaces or whatever in the apps to make them more usable and more likable? So tell us, first of all, like, how did you come up with this idea? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so this came from when I was teaching in graduate school. So I was teaching a class, and this was something that we were reviewing research that is decades old about what motivates people and what causes habits to form. And I just noticed that so much of this just wasn't being used very well in product design. And so initially, me and my co-founder we're like, oh, this is it. We're going to build a bunch of products. We're going to build some category killers and use what we know about technology and about behavior to take over all these markets. And we found that was really hard, building a whole bunch of different products. So we decided to focus it way down on the thing that we're good at. And we decided we're going to make this expertise, this thing we know about where habits come from and how products create habits, and make that available as a product to developers so they can go and make their category killer using our technology.
Cool. So when I think of apps where people can are are habitual, right? I'm thinking
Mhm.
about Candy Crush, and I'm thinking about Facebook, and I'm thinking about stuff like that where maybe Pokemon Go now. I'm not sure. I haven't bought
Uh-huh.
into it, but I know a lot of kids are. By kids, I mean human beings of
Yeah,
all
yeah. No, I love
ages
Pokemon
and,
Go.
and,
I
and
still play.
ethnicities and everything. Everybody's playing that game. And maybe I'm afraid of my own habit forming habits, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I haven't played it. So that's what I'm thinking of, right? So
Okay.
what do these apps have in common that make them so like viral, where people they want to do it, and then once they do it, it's hard to put the device down.
Yeah. So the key is to be positively surprising as often as possible. So this is how it works in the brain. When you do something and then the world responds to your action in a way that was unexpectedly rewarding, that's one more click in the habit loop and it becoming more of a strong habit. So in, let's say, Candy Crush, this would be that you lock in a combination and it starts a whole cascade that you didn't see coming and
Hmm.
it was surprisingly awesome. That makes you, at a very subconscious level, want to continue and do that behavior more often and more intensely.
Yeah, it's true because I'm thinking about back to when I first saw that game when I first started playing it. It's just like okay, yeah, you do this thing, you see that it's pattern recognition. It's what can I see? Can I put the pieces together? Okay, now it's more like can I plan 3 or 4 steps ahead in order to get the thing to fall down the way that I want it to fall down and so forth. And so a little bit of that Tetris stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. I'm like, yes, I'm amazing. Look at what I just, and I didn't do anything, right? I slid my finger from right
Yep.
to left and matched 3 things together. But that visual reward and that auditory stimulus just just made me go into I am an awesome person feeling right there for like
Yes.
30
And
seconds.
so this is something that game designers hit upon. They found that intuitively, they intuited their way to, wow, if we can do the rewards right here, this could be super sticky. And so what we're doing is taking that thing that used to be intuitive for game designers and offering it as an algorithm package so that you can make clearing your email inbox as sticky as clearing the board on Candy Crush.
Okay, so before we get into like the particular technologies and the particular stuff about your business, let's get
Yep.
into the brain, right? So your business is called Dopamine Labs, and
Yeah.
I know that word. It's a word is about like some drug in your body, and it's like it makes you kind of feel high and euphoric. But tell us a little bit about maybe what the dopamine whatever it is like, and what makes it work.
Yeah, so dopamine is produced in the deepest, oldest core of the brain. So way down in the brainstem, this is one of the oldest parts of evolutionarily, the oldest and most basic parts of the brain is where dopamine is produced. And then from there, it's shot out and wired in to the entire brain. And so this is one little region down in the base of the brain. And what it
Hmm.
does is this dopamine release encodes that was awesome. And so that's what
Sweet.
the chemical dopamine communicates to the whole brain is whatever you just did, do more of that.
Wow. And so it's in our oldest nether reaches. So this is like our ancientest forefathers, or if you believe in evolution and all that kind of stuff, then our way back in the ancestor days of wherever we evolved from, that was the one of the first things that evolved into us is that was awesome. Whatever you just did, that was amazing, and do it again.
Yeah. Because the brain is an evolved survival machine.
Uh-huh.
It's evolved to do a lot of fancy things on top of that, but what it's really there to do is to get you to do more of the things that keep you alive and reproducing. So it has this signal deep down inside of it that pushes you towards anything that's been rewarding in the past and say, hey, do more of that, do more of that. And that's the core of motivation in the brain and is where all habits come from.
Gotcha. So positive or negative habits, it's where it all comes from, is something in our primitive caveman brains is saying, that was awesome. You got to get you some more of that. Do that again.
Yep, and that signal is communicated by dopamine, which is why, we named the company after that, because what we're doing is algorithmizing, and how do you hack that core of the brain to make anything habit forming and sticky.
Right. So, this could go the wrong direction, right? So, as Peter Parker's uncle said, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So, we know that there are certain things in life that are not so good for us. So I'm thinking like drugs, there's stuff, right? There's stuff out there that is not good for us. It's not healthy. It's actually bad for us. Why does this stuff still trigger the old caveman brain, microbrain in there that says, this is awesome, you got to get more of this?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes from, it's stuff that used to feel good. So even if it doesn't feel good anymore, if it used to feel good, you're still driven to seek it out. So even though, so the most extreme example is something like drug addiction. Someone, they don't want to do it. They have repeatedly tried to quit, but they can't bring themselves to stop smoking cigarettes. Even though they really, really don't want to do it, it's because it used to be rewarding. And the rut that's been laid down by the habit is so strong that even though you don't want to do it anymore, because it used to be rewarding, the habit is still super strong, and the drive and the impulse is still there.
So does that mean you still get your dopamine fix, even if it's a bad thing, it's an unhealthy thing, and you like consciously know that you shouldn't be doing this, right? You shouldn't be smoking cigarettes, that you now have lung cancer or a condition that may lead to lung cancer, and it's really bad, and you know that it's really bad, but if you still have that, once you smoke another cigarette, like does your dopamine signals just start firing off everywhere, even though you don't want it to?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with chemical addictions, you can get the dopamine signal continuing to fire even after you don't want it. But with behavioral addictions, you can still get these addictive behaviors, even though they're not producing dopamine anymore. It's just the fact that they used to produce dopamine. And so there's a model of social anxiety that also talks about this sort of thing. So anxiety can be a learned response. And so it's a habit of, I'm in a social situation, I should be anxious, and when I'm anxious, I should do this. That is, even though there's no outward behavior, that thought process is habitual and is learned using these same algorithms in the brain, these same habit-forming systems.
And yeah, I can attest to that. So I've talked to other people, done a little research, and everybody's kind of wired up a little differently. Or when they figure themselves out, or they get figured out, right? They kind of understand that we all respond maybe a different way, but it kind of elicits this fight, flight, freeze response. And in me, it was absolutely frozen, right? It was like a deer in the headlights, like trapped on the middle of the road, and oh my gosh, I see my doom impending here inch by inch as it's flying down the highway at 70 miles an hour, and then splat, I'm a goner. And that's the way I felt, like over and over. But you're saying that I turned that into a habit. I turned that response into a habit because at some point early on, me freezing and not talking and not responding to people, not trying to communicate, that felt at least like a positive thing. Like, yes, I survived. I didn't die, and I should just freeze from now on.
Yeah, it felt better than you thought it would. Even as it's not fun to feel that way, but it felt better than you thought it would have. And so that's how you bootstrapped this anxiety response in the habit system. And I'm sure, as you're seeing now, it's possible to learn a new habit, right? The habit is there, but it's possible to learn something new. And through a lot of exposure and through, you get out there and you talk to people and things didn't go as badly as you were expecting. That is the kernel of a new habit around social interaction.
Yeah, I love the book and the message by Zhai Zhang. who went through this really crazy rejection therapy stuff where he's going out and asking people for ridiculous stuff. Hey, can I plant a flower in your backyard, or plant a flower in your front yard? Can I kick a soccer ball around in your backyard, and have you take pictures of me doing it? Can you custom create some donuts for me that look like the shape of the Olympic rings, and all this kind of stuff he's doing on video, on tape, because he's like nauseous just thinking about asking people for something. And then through people actually saying, yeah, sure, come on in the backyard, I'll take your picture. You seem like a weird guy, but you seem safe. And it was like very inspiring to me to hear that story, because it's like, oh wow, we can train ourselves to get past this. And I see other people talking and having relationships and having a good time. So it must not be bad. There just must be something wrong with the way I respond. So maybe if I can respond different. You know what, dude? We're getting like totally sidetracked here. And I think we could turn this into a whole nother segment, a whole nother podcast. So when we come back from break, tell you what, let's talk about your app or your technology and how you're actually helping developers turn their apps into a habit. But first, we'll take a quick break and thank our sponsors. This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by Minio Cloud Storage. Minio is a cloud object storage server for developers and DevOps written in Go. The Go programming language is the emerging language of choice for modern cloud infrastructure projects, and it allows Minio to be highly concurrent and lightweight. Minio is Amazon S3 compatible, built with microstorage architecture in mind, but at its heart, Minio is simple, scalable, and supported by a passionate developer and user community. In episode 89 of Hello Tech Pros, I talked with A.B. Periasamy, one of the founders of Minio, about the importance of community support and recruiting software developers who are as passionate about their product's code as artists are of their art. Check out that episode at hellotechpros.com/89 and check out Minio Cloud Storage at minio.io. That's minio.io. Are you new to podcasting? Are you looking for a fast, high-quality, yet budget-friendly podcast production team? Let TransSource Media take care of you. With a team of professional audio and video editors, writers, and graphic artists, they can help you build your podcast from planning, post-production, and platform submission. Using only cutting-edge software and studio equipment, they're here to make each and every show sound at its best. To get a free quote, please visit www.transsourcemedia.com or send them an email at marketing@transsourcemedia.com or call them at 209-505-5693. TransSource Media, transforming businesses through the power of multimedia. Okay, we're back with Dalton Combs. We've been talking to Dalton about my brain and why it do the things it do. It is a weird primordial beast that is sometimes it feels uncontrollable, but we're all this way, right? We all have habit-forming scenarios. We have things that we like and dislike that tells this ancient system in our brain to pump out this dopamine, which tells us, dude, that was awesome. You got to do that again. That was amazing. You have to experience this one more time. And you do that early enough and often enough, it'll turn into a habit, whether it's healthy for you or not. So Dalton is using this knowledge and using this power, hopefully for the forces of good, right, Dalton? Yes.
I promise.
Yes, I promise. And we implore you, if you're going to use Dalton's technology, that you also have to use it for the forces of good. Don't listen to this episode and be like, oh yeah, I absolutely have to take advantage of people now because I can master their desires. We're not going to do that. Yeah, but what we are going to do
talk to all the developers that use our product, and we make sure there's no slot machines in there.
No slot machines. No slot machine apps here. Sorry, I got a lot of horrible jokes floating through my head, and I'm just gonna leave them. Alone. Okay, so Dalton, tell us about your technology. So you're working at Dopamine Labs. It's similar to the dopamine effect that fires off in your brain. So how are you turning apps into a habit?
Yeah, so the long-term ambition for the company is to be a general API for human behavior, and so we're starting with dopamine and habit formation. And the way developers use our product is they pick an app or they pick an action that they want users to do more in their app. So this can be clearing an email from an inbox. It can be going on a run. It can be finishing a deck of flashcards. And this is the core activity of their app that's going to help improve their user's life. And then we help them design a reward that will be really authentic to that action. And then the math that we do is figuring out when to deliver a reward or when not to deliver a reward in order to, on a user-by-user basis, make it as surprising and delightful as possible.
Interesting. So these are not people that you have hooked up to the MRI anymore. These are people
Right.
just like they're pulling their iPhone out of their pocket. They're using this app, and you are doing the math and do the science behind, okay, the last time Chad used this, nothing happened or something happened or whatever. So this time when he uses it, when he does it again, like we're going to give him with that amazing, like that Candy Crush, like uber explosion, powerful firecracker stuff to make him go, oh my gosh, I just did this. This was awesome. I got to do it again.
You got it, man. And so one way to think about this is if you're doing something in an app and you never get a reward, then you get bored and you stop playing with the app. But if every time you do something, you get this reward, then it kind of washes out and just becomes background noise and you start ignoring it. So what we figure out is on a user-by-user basis, when and how should an app praise a user in order to get that habit to form as fast as possible.
Interesting. So you guys are not necessarily doing the animations or doing the sound effects or doing the whatever it is, that reward itself, but you're telling the app developer, right, okay, now's the time, do the thing, hit the awesome button, run the awesome code. And then there may be, I don't know, a couple of different responses like awesome 1 or awesome 2. Hit awesome 1. Now's the time. And then the app developer goes, okay, run that sequence. And then it goes off. And then Chad feels like amazing. Like I can leap tall buildings in a single bound because I have hit this animation or hit this sequence in the app that is maybe hard to get to or doesn't happen very often. Or I was just, like you said, like pleasantly surprised that it happened.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And just that little bit of it feels like a small thing, but it has a really big impact. So we found that this can increase user behavior, user engagement and retention by 60%.
Wow.
Just using this one algorithm.
Wow, that's cool. So I'm gonna tell you a secret, Dalton. I'm actually working on an app. And
Okay.
I've not announced this on the podcast. I've not announced this anywhere. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details here because it's not ready for kind of public consumption yet. But it is in the area of communication, right? So I've struggled with social anxiety, and just the fact that I'm learning to fight my fears and learning to communicate with people more often and to proactively reach out and not just wait for them to call me or text me or walk by and say hello or whatever, but to actively reach out. And so it's in this area. And so my reward system, right, needs to be in this area, right, where when they do something good, when they proactively provide some information, when they proactively reach out to someone, when they proactively communicate, then regardless of how the person responds or if the person responds on the other end, right? Because we're all busy. Maybe if they didn't receive my email or if they said, okay, not now, Chad, I'm too busy to talk about this stuff, or if they just completely ignored me, it may be because of something going on in their life and it's not me, right? So I need to understand that the fact that I still reached out, the fact that I am still trying, that's a good positive thing. And so I want to reward the users for doing that. I want to reward myself for doing that, right? So as an app developer, how do I integrate your system, your API into my app so that I can make these things happen and fire off amazing reward 1 versus amazing reward 2?
Yeah, you saw. I think you see the design pattern here really well. So you want to, right when the user sends off a piece of communication, that would be a reward opportunity to tell them, hey, great job reaching out, or not, right? Sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. and we could definitely help you figure that out. And then the second thing would be on the response. So when word comes back on an email, there's another opportunity to either praise and reward the user for what they did before or not. And then figuring out what's the way to make that maximally surprising and maximally habit forming.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I didn't think about that. So on the response, when the person replies back, responds back, or acknowledges my notification or whatever it is, just that ping back, right? That is a double response. That is a double, let's see, a double, what am I trying to say? It's awesome. It's doubly awesome. So
yeah. Even if you don't hear back what you wanted to hear back, like hearing back should be, I think should probably be rewarded. And, you could run an experiment on that kind of question. Like, what should the praise be and what should the communication to the user be when they get a response back? And how helpful is that for changing behavior as compared to the reward that's delivered when the user sends a text message or reaches out?
Okay, so even if it's in a negative situation, for instance, if I send a message to my wife and say, "Hey, are you mad at me?" and she replies back, "Yes," right? That's like, oh, dang, that sucks. But there should still be a reward for me reaching out and for her responding.
If what you want to encourage is the user reaching out more often and reaching out in such a way they do get a response, then that's what you should be operantly rewarding.
Okay. Cool. Amazing stuff. So what types of apps have been built so far using this technology, and what are people doing with it?
Yeah, so we're targeting 5 big verticals: education, healthcare fitness, social, productivity, and education. Did I say education twice?
Yeah, it's doubly important.
Doubly important. And so the one I'm most proud of so far is an app that is helping users recover from cardiovascular surgery. So remaining physically active after cardiovascular surgery really cuts hospital readmittance rates, and it increases the outcomes for the patients. So this app is trying to get them moving and physically active as quickly as possible after surgery. And so that's the app where we've seen a 60% increase in the user engagement and retention inside the app, so that they're moving more often and they're moving more regularly because of the way the dopamine algorithm works.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Like, you're literally like saving lives with that stuff. That's cool.
It feels great to be able to take this research from academia and get it out there and get it applicable to so many people.
Man, that's got to be hard. I mean, there's so many papers published every year and so many different areas of study, but to actually like map that and turn it into an actual solution, right? And there's different types of solutions, right? There's pills and there's APIs and there's everything in between. But to actually see your work, see your hypotheses actually working and helping people, that's got to fire off your dopamine signals like times 1,000.
Yeah, it's great. When I first got into graduate school, I was expecting this to happen much more often. Like, I thought this was the norm, that research would move from academia into application. But the stuff we're working with has been known to, this line of research has been going for decades. And there have been some big breakthroughs in the last decade or so, in the last 5-6 years. But I'm really surprised to see that so few developers are taking advantage of it.
Cool. Well, there's so much to understand. Many developers are just struggling with, I can't get the stupid thing to compile, and just trying to get it to work. So
so that's why we're here to take this thing off their plate, make that easier than compiling.
Perfect. Awesome. Great stuff. Well, Dalton, this has been an amazing experience for me. I've learned a lot, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. But before we leave, can you share any parting words of wisdom for our audience about what you want them to know or do outside of this podcast? And then, you know what? Share the best way that we can contact you and Dopamine Labs, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would give two pieces of advice. So personally, watch yourself and look for the habits that you're enacting in your life, and think about what you could do to rearrange your environment or to rearrange the way you're living to get more of the habits you want in your life and less of the habits you don't. And there are some notes in our blog that people may find helpful for that. And then the second thing would be a professional piece of advice is whatever product you're working on, whether it's technological or not, think about the behavior of how your users engage with your product and what your critical behaviors are and what you can do to help your user do that more or do it in a way that's more helpful to them and build that long-term habit. And then if you want to talk, if you want to reach out to me, probably the best way to do that would either be through our website at usedopamine.com or my email address, which is Dalton, Dalton, at usedopamine.com.
Awesome. Dalton, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. I really value this very insightful deep dive into how my brain works and help me kind of understand, literally, help me understand why I struggle in some of the areas that I struggle and why I've been able to make headway and make progress in other areas. And you know what? Help my audience understand that no matter where we are, we can always seek help and find different ways to solve our problems. We don't have to be stuck in these areas. We can get over it, right? And then from the app perspective, man, what you're doing is awesome. It's very, very cool. So thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Chad, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to bring that message to your listeners. I enjoy talking about it at least as much as you enjoy hearing about it.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Tech Pros, if you feel stuck in some situation, if you feel like some habit that you have, now that you've listened to this and really get introspective on what makes you tick and what are some of the negative habits, right? No matter how big or how small that they are, really look at your responses. Like Dalton said, what triggers you? What fires you off? What gets you angry or gets you sad or gets you whatever? Make sure emotions get out of whack and your behaviors get out of whack from what you want to have and the type of person that you want to be. You can change. These habits can change into more positive habits. You can have a more rewarding life. You can have more rewarding experiences, more rewarding relationships and careers and everything else. But it's going to take a little bit of belief on your end that, yes, this is possible. So use me as an example. Chad has changed from the type of person who was literally standing in the corner in his own family reunions, afraid to talk to aunts and uncles and cousins because of this social anxiety problem. And now I have this podcast where I'm talking to Dalton and you guys, strangers until we're not strangers anymore, 7 days a week. And it's awesome. And my dopamine levels have now switched and changed into this is the feeling that I want to feel, and it's amazing. And you can feel this too. If you want to talk to me about social anxiety, go to hellotechpros.com/SAD, social anxiety, or hellotechpros.com/SAD. I've got a couple of quizzes there, just stuff I'm interested in seeing how people in different technology roles feel, like how anxious do you get in certain situations, right? So getting a new job, working with your peers in the office, having some conflict at work if you're a software developer, like shipping your code and doing the daily stand-ups and all that kind of stuff. Certain people have different responses to certain triggers. And I'm just trying to get a good feel of what sets you off and what gets you anxious and what gets you really stressed out. And if there's anything that I can do, I would love to help you there. You've been listening to Dalton Combs, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/194. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been People Friday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I discuss entrepreneurship. On Sunday, being unplugged. Monday, motivation. Tuesday, productivity. Wednesday, leadership. Thursday, technology. And then back again on Friday to talk people and communication. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.